So welcome to Blacklisted Conversations. My name is Akua Gyamfi. Blacklisted Conversations is where I bring together creatives who've watched something or read something or listened to something and then discuss something with the people who made the something. And today we're here with some very esteemed creators. We're very, very grateful to have the people behind the documentary Stamped from the Beginning. Could you guys please explain your role on Stamped, please? Starting from you, Mara.
I'm Mara Brock-Akil, and I'm a producer in Hollywood and mostly television, but now I'm helping to make doc films.
I'm Roger Ross Williams. I'm the director of Stamped and a documentary. Well, actually, no, not just documentary. I'm
Exactly.
a feature and doc, because I just did my first feature. Scripted feature.
Yeah. I'm Ibram X. Kendi. I'm a scholar and author of Stamped from the Beginning.
And many other books.
Thank you. First of all, we've all watched the film, and I wanted you guys to kind of give me a word that best describes how Stamped made you feel in the aftermath, as it relates to you as a person and a creative. If that's not too difficult, please can you throw some words out? One word, actually.
Affirmed. Yeah, definitely. I think that there are conversations that I think we're limited to having in Britain, especially Black British discourse. And I think being able to kind of just bring certain things in. We are having the conversations, of course, and we have been having the conversations for decades, but it was really great to have Stamped from the Beginning to kind of add to the tapestry of whatever it is that we're weaving together and having an understanding of ourselves.
Who else?
I'll try it in one word. Inspired.
Oh, that was my word. Think quick.
It's because we're working together. It's synchronicity.
I'm going to say curious. Very curious.
Informed.
Disrupted a little bit. I think there's always the feeling when, especially when you hear people talk about it so viscerally, talking about experiences so viscerally, that kind of shakes the body a little bit. And even from my experience and as a writer as well, it's never settling. But my kind of disruption doesn't necessarily mean I'm feeling in any way anxious. It just means that there's work to be done to a certain degree, and it doesn't stop. So I think, if anything, it just keeps the engine going, you know? So I give thanks for that.
Just go on.
I thought of a new word. Connected. I think it was really important, especially because we are watching this from the Black British perspective, and it was really interesting to draw parallels between our experience and the experience of the Black American community. So I felt very connected to our siblings across the pond.
You said curious.
Yeah.
Let's go.
For me, both as a creative and like the context of like what you guys created, I feel like I had never seen a documentary that is done with so many different creative elements. I'm talking everything from like the poetry to the evolving art style that was in it. Like you had like the drawings and the animations that started to evolve throughout. And that's what made me curious in terms of like what that style was about, what was the inspiration for that. And also curious about where the research actually came from, because in school I ain't learned about none of this. I didn't learn about none of this. And so like, where does all of that come from? Is it from, I guess, grandparents? Is it from the books you read, like for you guys, I guess, personally? So that's what I was very curious about.
And just, you said informed.
Yeah, very similar to yourself. We're not really taught about the British Black perspective, yet let alone the American perspective. So it was really cool just to get like an opening introduction to wanting to learn more about it.
So for you guys, how does the words that have been used and the explanations, how does that resonate with you guys and the intention in bringing Stamped from the Beginning to life?
You know, you said something, I always throw it to Kendi. You said that it basically translates all over the world, really. The message of the film, you talked about that yesterday in the Q&A. I found that really interesting, how it's not just, you know, an American, you know, sort of story. And I don't know.
Well, it's just that Blackness is a global construct, even as it's operating differently in different nations. But there's similarities to notions that Black people are more hypersexual or more violent, or, you know, I think that we sort of shared in the film. But I'm my reaction is just, I think, excitement, because in many ways in talking about this film, these are the types of words we were seeking to invoke.
It's funny you used the word disruptive, and I understood what you mean. And after our screening last night, I had a long conversation with friends from Amsterdam, and we talked all night. We didn't use that word, but we were talking about the disruption. And one thing what landed on us is the idea that where we are in this war over ideas. And I think for me, the book was transformative in reminding us of how much resistance that there's always been from the beginning. And so it's never really that. The history does not want you to know that. They want us to stay asleep, They want us to stay passive or just, just not having that knowledge. We're not supposed to have that. So the disruption and reminding ourselves that, I think this is what you meant, is that, there's more work to be done. There's more fight the more resistance to these ideas. And the one thing I want to say for myself and for us especially, it's so wonderful to sit here and see all these young faces, on it. I'm like, okay, I like this, let's do this. I want to remind us that, and it's actually already happening in the fight. There's also these conversations about how rest is protest, is resistance. That remembering that this has been a long war over racist ideas. And we are just another sort of army of artists, army of thinkers, army of people. And we have to remember how to restore so that we can stay in the fight in an elegant way. I've been thinking about that a lot, and so I feel just really also want to thank you for your words, because it's been 3 years of working on it. And what are the victories? And your words today are part of that victory. So thank you.
Yeah. You said inspired, and someone said inspired. What I try to do, you asked a question about how, all the different styles and all the different, what I set out to do is I was like, okay, I want to create a documentary that no one's ever seen before. I want to create something that is completely original and fresh, and obviously that's a big challenge because it's hard to do something no one's ever done before. But I think as a creative, I have gained in confidence over time that I am confident enough to take risks and actually use all the tools in the toolbox, and figure out a way to make them, flow together and connect through the narrative that is Dr. Kendi's work.
I think because I think too, we were talking about the ideas have been fought in these various forms, and for you to hurl them all back in 90 minutes, it's kind of powerful.
Yeah, well, racist ideas, are disseminated through popular culture, and so it was really important to use popular culture to create these pieces in the art style of the time, and that morphs. And the way art and popular culture morphs, these ideas morph and change policy. And so I wanted the film to morph and change as we progress through time.
But something different happens in 1444. It's the moment in which the first large cargo of captives who are captured by the Portuguese in Senegambia are brought to Portugal to be sold. That, for me, is the beginning of what becomes the transatlantic slave trade.
What I'm hearing, you, Roger, wanting to do something for the first time, something different for the first time. Dr. Kendi, this is the first time adapting your work into, and then Mara, this is your first time working with documentary.
Come on, connections.
But it's Blacklist, I think. But this first revolutionary style, how did you guys work together knowing that this is we're trying to do something different here? And all of your work, the stories are told in a way that everyone can relate and understand and really get to grasp about the normalities of the black existence or whatever, or leveling the playing field when it comes to that. How did you guys connect in that way to say this is the mission?
I want to say two things. I hope I can remember the second after I talk about the first. For me, you know, one of our superpowers is our intuition. That we've actually been, lots of conversations around the diaspora and how we've been disconnected from our native understanding of our soul, our power, our innate religion in a sense. Like, he doesn't really need a label in a lot of ways. And for me, when my deal at Netflix closed right around the time that the alarming numbers of Black death was happening around COVID. And people were trying to sort that out. And a lot of Black scholars were like, we've been trying to tell you that the disparities were going to add up, and they're adding up in death in this form. And then right after that, George Floyd was murdered right before our eyes for 9 minutes. And though you were supposed to do something else, like another Girlfriends, another Being Mary Jane, another Love Is, my intuition said, no, it's go time. You have to figure out some other way to be in, I use the word the fight, but I'm changing that language to the resistance now that I've gotten to know Dr. Kende and his scholarship. But the resistance that it's in us, that is built in us, that intuition. So this idea of first was a calling that was so loud and built on some intelligence that I didn't technically do yet, but I have it within me to do. And that intelligence and that intuition would lead me in partnership to Roger, who also at the same time, I wanted to approach the book as the modern day Roots. So imagine that epic scale on the scale of The Crown. And then, but at the same time, but I will respect this, at the same time, I knew of Roger Walsh Williams, but I did not know Roger. And so they were like, hey, there's another, do you know Roger Walsh Williams? He's after the book, he wants to do it in a documentary, and maybe you guys should meet. And so they did introduce us, and we got on the phone, and I want to do something different. I wanted to, maybe we can sort of think about styles, and I just was like, yes, I would love to be in support of helping you translate this important scholarship in the ways that you want to express this new first.
Yeah. I think we were all grappling with George Floyd, and as a creative, I was like, first I tackled Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me as a pandemic special with actors doing dramatic readings of the book for HBO, and then took on the 1619 Project, which is the New York Times series, Nicole Hannah-Jones, and took that on with Nicole and Oprah, and then when I read Kendi's book, it sort of connected the dots for me personally, that how much I bought into these racist ideas myself, and he writes about that in How to Be an Anti-Racist, but the book was this deep scholarship, and when you have 541 pages, how do you turn that into a 90-minute film? And it was about the essence of what messages in the book I could connect to that it's not I wasn't going to go into the book is so detailed and so dense, and so I came up with this idea of 9 lies about Black people, and that was the framework for the film. Those are the chapter headings in the film, and that gave me a framework. And then sort of it was like editing style. That's a process. We had a really long. Quite I don't know, boring cut. And
a lot of rewriting.
They were very polite in that both they didn't
Well, when you start working together, those moments are actually very crucial to the birthing of a project. because you have to listen and you have to, but how do you say the truth at the time that you need to say the truth? Yeah, and so that's what I think.
Can I interject for you, Dr. Kendi, just
Yeah.
on the back of that? Your beautiful book, your important book, your important narrative and words being discussed back and forth, like how are we going to do this and be so revolutionary? How did you let go? Were you very hands-on? Were you like, guys, no, listen to me? How did it work?
Inquiring minds.
I think for me, I think for the beginning, I wanted to work with people who I deeply trusted.
Right.
And so I really trusted Roger and Mara and Elisa and our whole team. And part of the reason why I trusted them, and I think you've already sort of seen this, is because they were just incredibly ambitious about the potential and the possibilities, about this project. And I think for me, because racist ideas and those who produce them have always been incredibly ambitious, to think that they can convince the world that there's some meaning in our skin color. And so we needed to be equally ambitious. So I was just really excited to work with them and trusted them.
We have to look at the fact that race has not always been a given. We came across that water and we were Fula, we were Igbo, we were Yoruba, Wolof, we were Mandinka. But somewhere across the Atlantic, we became one community.
Oftentimes we assume that race is only about the color of one's skin, the grade of one's hair, or whatever. It is about slavery.
Based on what we've heard just now, guys, any kind of questions, thoughts, responses to that?
Thank you. I had a question for Mara, actually, just because you speak about the resistance, and one of the things that stood out for me in this documentary was the amplification of Black women.
Yes.
Perspective. And it made me realize just how rare it is that
Yes.
the voice of authority when it comes to history is usually male and usually white male. And you've been consistent in your work, Marisha and Girlfriends, in amplifying Black women. But how was it as a Black female exec on a subject matter that is so sensitive and maybe difficult for other commissioners and other execs to receive? How did you maintain that resistance and maintain your voice as a Black woman?
Wow. I walked into the space with confidence and knowing that I was going to take up the space if need be. But because, Dr. Kendi talked about trust, it's reciprocal. I trusted to be heard. So there was no fight in this process at all. In fact, when you make it about the work, it actually becomes very easy. And the book itself has the receipts of Black women being the actually Phyllis Wheatley, Harriet Jacobs, Ida B. Wells. They were the first, and part of that was about their position of the times in that, like Girlfriends, I want to make this connection. The power of Girlfriends is actually how much the studios devalued it, actually, and how much I valued it, and everyone involved valued it. No different than Phyllis, no different than Harriet, no different than Ida, who, though everyone else was undervaluing Black women, that Black women can be invisible, our superpower is actually our ability to do anyway. To do anyway at the level that you value yourself. And with that light will shine and they will come as a result of that. And that's proven with Phyllis, that's proven even through Girlfriends. And in the book, there's so many patterns of Black women being on the front lines of the resistance by doing the work when nobody else was paying attention or cared, that they knew that it was worth doing anyway. And so these Black scholars who were on a long list of other male and white, and our Black woman producer, Elisa Payne, who prepared that list for Roger, and Roger who loves black women. And when he could see the pattern on the list, black women just wrote, it was just there. The numbers were there.
Yeah.
And we were able in our conversation to say, look at all these connections. Funny you use that word connections, the connections in the book and the connections here. And even there was a conversation about our black men, but if you notice in the archive, a lot of black men, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, Martin Luther King, Stokely, they got on camera because they were the voice of that time. Mm-hmm. And they were the anti-racist out front who, a lot of them were murdered as a result of being anti-racist. But my point being, black women are here, they have been, it is time.
Mm-hmm. There was, I'll add that there was a lot of pushback from the studio because they said to me, wait a minute, you're gonna limit the audience if you just focus on, if you just use black women, you know, it should be it's gonna
be a niche
documentary. It's gonna be a niche documentary. And I was confident enough as a director to say absolutely not, and to hold fast. We held our ground, and now the studio's coming there because I'm like, this is a statement in itself. This is a part of the narrative. This is a part of the statement to focus this on black women academics, and I'm gonna hold to that. And now the studio's like they're like, oh, we love it. We love the idea. You know, we didn't resist. But it was an example of like, you know, you have to like really like as a creative, you can't compromise your vision.
I think
I just wanted to jump in on that. To that point of a niche audience, when you're making something like this, you've already got a captive audience who are us globally. We just want to see ourselves reflected, full stop. So you're constantly watching out. I'll turn on whenever I see a black face, I'll stop. What kind of impact and legacy do you feel that this will have for people that aren't the captive audience? Do you think, you know, because for me, it's always a constant thought when we're going into a project, how am I speaking to the people that don't listen or don't want to listen?
Well, that was the challenge presented to me by Netflix, that how is this going to be accessible? How is this going to be, you know, so the way we use music, needle drop, the Wonderland, the composers, Nate and Roman, who are Janelle Monáe's company, her composers. It's all very digestible and accessible, but it's not diluted. Mm-hmm. The message isn't diluted, so people just like, they're like, oh wow, it's funny at times. Mm-hmm. They know all these like pop culture references and clips. People are like entertained by it, and then they're getting the message almost like the way racist ideas are disseminated. They're like, it's like subconsciously they're getting the message, and it's Netflix, so it's 250 million homes, and it's like, you know, I always say, you know, like, Kendi's one of the most banned authors, if not the most banned author in America. But they can't ban Netflix. And you may be scrolling through and you may be like, oh, this is entertaining, this is interesting. And then, I mean, already at screenings, people who've come to screenings are like, I went home and had a conversation with my parents about this. I've had it sparks a conversation, and people tell me, like, after watching it, like, I mean, we've done so many screenings now, from Toronto Film Festival through IDFA, which was last night, that it has sparked. They can't stop thinking about it, and that's there's going to be a conversation. And I had a friend who bought. She bought their very conservative parents to a screening, and they said they stayed up till midnight discussing it with their parents.
Yeah, I said it. Well, you know, I want to say that as a storyteller in this project and storytelling in general around your question, the whole reason why we are in this war over racist ideas is because on the other side of that war is the real simple fact that we're all human beings. So, but still going through the specificity or the niche. But first of all, I also believe love is details. And in that specificity, if you believe and know that we are all human beings, it will strike. It will strike. So And so you can be as authentic, you know, that word is used around in art, being authentic to tell the story that you are uniquely able to tell. Like, again, Roger's body of work, it prepared him for this moment to know when, no, this I am holding, we're not doing this one. We can argue or debate about other areas of the film, but women are going to be in this, they're going to be the authority on this film. And even sonically, when you hear their voices, it's just an interesting, like sonically you realize we don't hear that all the time. Like that's not the voice that we hear. And that's also just,
that was an adjustment for myself. I just want to say that was an adjustment. I was like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Then that's our internal, it's our internalized anti-blackness. Yeah. And one of the professors, I forget her name, she talks about the fact that somebody says to her that, oh, you sound ignorant when you speak like that. And I just want people to understand you. And that really struck a chord with me personally, because there is a way that I present myself in this Black British space that it's not palatable. And so people will run to not hear you. And so having to push to still say, no, I'm going to make my point and I'm very smart, so I'm going to still make my point regardless of whatever filter you're trying to perceive me through and what you understand. And so I just wanted to say that I'm really grateful that you kind of pushed aside palatability and gave us Black women experts, because Black women are experts in so many fields, yet we're not presented, we're not at the forefront of a lot of situations. People are expecting us to not be very smart. And when you mentioned about the niche, again, that really struck a chord, because when I wrote Edge of Here, you know, speculative fiction, but the protagonists are all Black women. The publishers were like, yeah, but how do we market that to people? Like, what? And to people. Why wouldn't they want to read? You like Black Mirror, so why wouldn't you like this? Like,
you love Octavia Butler, why wouldn't you?
And that Octavia Butler was my kind of inspiration with Wild Seed. So I just thought that was interesting, and how our heart breaks all of the time. And there was a specific shot when you spoke about Phyllis Wheatley, and then you showed all of these super smart, super confident Black women. It's like the little girl in them came out, and I was just like, oh, my heart, me too, because it's there when you have to stand in front of people and justify who you are.
The Phyllis Wheatley moment. We call it the Phyllis Wheatley moment, and all of us, even Black men, we all have a Phyllis Wheatley moment. And that's something that has really resonated with people, and people come up to us and tell us their Phyllis Wheatley moment.
Just a note, just to explore the visually, how this just presented on screen is incredible. And for me, it almost felt like it was episodic in terms of the different subject matters that you were going through. And there was, it was almost felt like a roller coaster in terms of, we're gonna go through this, and you think we're finished. But it's interesting, when the next title came up, it almost gave us like a lull of a rest for a minute, because now we're about to go into this, right? But also, but visually, when you are met with the next part, I remember the kind of Black criminality part, it stays with me. Like, you made that bold text, like, we're about to go into this, we're about to go into Black, we're about to go into all of these parts. Visually, it's not a question, so to speak, because I know other folks have to speak, it's just like, visually, there are things that stay with you, as well as everything that's been explored in there, but visually, something just sticks. And I think whatever you take from it, if you're walking around and that's in your mind, the red touch as well with it, all of those things, like, it, just to kind of let you know that I clocked that. Just to say, like, I don't know if anyone's got some other points, but I definitely, it sticks, you know? So as a visual thing,
So it's the graphics and animation company. It's called Black Girls Animate. Black Girls Animate?
I think that's it.
Is it women or girls?
I think it's Black Women Animate.
Black Women Animate. And so they're all Black animators. So creating that look, and they came to us with a proposal, just blew us away. You know, I was just blown away by their proposal. And then the VFX animated in my head, they were little short films. So Phyllis Wheatley, it gives you a break to kind of go into the story and really like be in, you know, in Harriet Jacobs' world and story, and it's layered because it's layered with, you know, there's an actor on a green screen stage, you know, painted in the art style of the time, and then layered with like archive and art, and so that you have the freedom to, like, you know, bring something to it, because it's not like a literal, you know, you're not literally seeing Harriet Jacobs' story. It's like an interpretation of her story. So you visually, you get to, your mind does some work.
Yeah, it's because you remember, like, it started, say if the receipt of this resistance started with Harriet Jacobs and the idea of her resistance and what was happening to her, and you take it through time, you realize, oh wow, it's still happening to me. Like you were talking about and that is the part. And then you hold on to a visual, to almost like a talisman, to remind yourself where you really are, you know, in all of it. And so I resonate with it, yeah.
How does your book read? You have to tell us how your book reads. Are we getting the visuals exactly like the book, or is there something else to the narrative?
So I think the similarities is that, so the book is, as Roger stated, over 500 pages, but it's broken up into 5 sections, and each section has like a main character that the sort of narrative flows through their life or through their mind, which I think holds readers, because you're not just sort of, you're also sort of learning about a particular individual. So the last character in the book was Angela Davis, you know, as an example. So I think similarly with the film, you know, we have these really 4 main characters. We include the character in Benkin's Rebellion. That was, I think, quite pivotal to sort of really anchoring the viewer.
And just off Akua's question really quickly, when you made the choices about the historical things to include, we were talking earlier about, maybe it's in the book and we need to read it. 1735, right? Carolus Linnaeus isn't mentioned in the film, but we talk about 1444 and blackness being introduced to us then, but not about Homo aphis or Homo europaeus that Carolus Linnaeus introduced us to in 1735. Was that a conscious decision? Because we mentioned about, for instance, the Slavs and then slaves as an etymological term, but we don't touch on that. Were there things that you thought that should have been in there, but I understand why it's not in there?
So I'll leave it.
I would love to hear your answer, where you like, it's because
well, I think
Dr. Kendi he didn't, you know, he could have taken someone's book, someone's work, someone's scholarship, and turn it, you could go crazy, like with the creator, with the director, being like, you know, and I must say, Ta-Nehisi was the same. Ta-Nehisi was like, I don't want to see this. I'll see it when it's done, because I can't. If I start to get involved, I'm gonna tear it to. It's gonna be too much. So he wouldn't even. And Nicole opposite, but like, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, for me, I also was just thinking that this is a completely different medium, right? And so I was thinking about, it would have been difficult to introduce Linnaeus, and then I also think, because he sort of, in many ways, popularized our current conceptions of race, you know, as you know, that was critically important, but not necessarily as important to this specific, the narrative and the way we were creating, and certainly not as important as the creation of blackness itself. And so I think if the film, for instance, would have covered race more broadly, as opposed to sort of blackness and obviously, you know, whiteness, then I think Carl would have been even more important.
But it's also critical because what we want you to come away with is that these ideas, how they originated and how they still live. So marking a person to that originating idea or that originating resistance was somewhere where the choices had to be made, because there's so many people in the history. And so so that you hopefully will go read the book and many other books, right? Maybe even research some of the scholarship of the women in the film. There's so much to do, you know. sometimes even for me, sometimes you just want to play Candy Crush, but you're like, oh, maybe I should read something, yes.
That's what it did for me as well. It generally made me it made me want to wake up and do more and learn more, especially about everything that I go through as a young black man, but also like what my little sister can go through as a young black woman. So there was so much for me to pass around, and the ambition of it, I don't feel like it's something that is just experienced from you guys. I feel like ambition is something that's always experienced throughout all of our industries, all of our careers. And so that Phyllis Wheatley moment for me is I felt that. I know what it feels like to be a young black man in surrounded by multiple older people and having to prove myself to others. And I feel like I love that ambition that you guys had. It's inspired me and it's inspired, I guess, a lot of us.
And also, just to add, it gave language to that feeling, because when people, even you, Kelechi, when you speak, the way I'm just tell me more, and you might, just hearing black women have that authority over their stories and tell their stories, but not knowing exactly what that feeling is and where it comes from, and having a historical understanding of, okay, so this is what's happening in my mind and my heart, and this is why every time you open your mouth, something opens up in me and gives me that inspiration and that reminder of who I am and what I can achieve in this world.
We have to wrap. It's killing me. I wanted to let Oleta get a word in.
The sort of needle drop points of where you put the music in with the sort of hip hop and R&B stuff, and the score aspects as well, just really added to the whole experience of the film. So good job, guys.
It was important that the composers come with a deep love for what we were doing, and Nate and Roman are just brilliant composers, and also Amani Smith. Bert, we call him Bert. His nickname is Bert.
Bert Blackeret.
Bert Blackeret. Who did the needle drop? We were all just so connected and so driven over the material. So it just to be in the studio, to be at Wonderland, to be at Janelle's. She has this house in the Hollywood Hills where her company is, and it's all black creatives and composers, and it's that you can imagine. It's so. I was like, I got to be part of this. Because it was so cool. It was so cool, and it was just we just had a shorthand of language, and we started with the sounds in the hull of a slave ship. When you are in the middle passage, the how do you soothe yourself? The chains, the humming to yourself. We started with those bass sounds, and how those bass sounds are what evolved into modern day contemporary music. So it evolves, and it's the clanking of the chains and the humming to soothe yourself, and adding layers to that, and then the sounds in the fields, in the cotton fields, and layering that, very much. There was a 1619 in the podcast that Wesley Morris did about the yacht rock and how
I know
that was amazing.
That was an amazing piece.
But yeah,
and I love yacht rock. I do. And now I know why.
Well, now you know why.
I know why.
We don't understand why.
That's what you said, intuition.
Yes.
I love that we're ending on yacht rock.
Okay, maybe don't.
Thank you so much to my wonderful creatives and to the wonderful team behind Stand from the Beginning, which comes to Netflix, I think, on the 20th
Yes.
of November.
Yeah. Soon.
With an exclamation point, the 20th.
20th of November. Thank you so much. This has been Blacklisted Conversations. We'll do more.
Yeah.
Credit.